This is Preservation of the Human Race with whistleblower Jason Sands.
For any of you guys out there listening, my name is Jason Sands. I was Air Force Master Sergeant, retired in 2007 after 22 years of honorable service. Out of 3 years of that 22 years, I was stationed at Nellis Air Force Base, where I was part of the Legacy Program, where they reverse engineer exotic technologies. And that's where I got exposed to a lot of strangeness, let me put it that way. As we alluded to earlier, if you were in the space at the beginning, I was talking about there's other things other than that experience in the Air Force. I've also, it seems to be a phenomenon that's followed me and my family around all the way from early childhood into young adulthood and then joining the Air Force. And it still follows me around even now. So we'll get into some of those things as well. But what I did in 2022 was there were some things that I was seeing on the UAP Task Force forum. I was not working for the UAP Task Force, but I was one of the intel guys that had access to it. And since I had the Black World programs under my belt and experiences there, that's when I chimed in on a few of the cases we were investigating and analyzing. And that's where I ended up sharing some information about a particular incident at the Nellis Test Range. And I also had some concerns about some of the craft that I was seeing and what they were being used for that I knew were in our inventory from the Legacy Program. So that's when I went to Congress. I gave testimony as a whistleblower. I was actually the first whistleblower. David Grush and I were both going through different paths at that time. I think David would have gone in before I did. But I ended up going in first because he was actually going through an IG complaint process, which I was not. And that's a formal process that you can't just, do whatever you want to with that one. You've got to wait for certain steps to go through. So I ended up going through the NDAA process and whistleblower protections process in 2022. That was a really good feeling to get off my chest all the information there and my concerns. And then I continued on the path. I actually ran into a filmmaker, James Fox, and he's came out and we accidentally kind of bumped into each other when I was talking to Chris Mellon once. There was an email that went back and forth, and my nickname is Jay, and as you know, Jay is also Stratton, Jay Stratton, and Chris Mellon and James Fox were on this text or messaging, and they thought I was Jay Stratton, and I'm like, no, and then they were all of a sudden, well, who are you then? Why would you be talking to Chris Mellon and all this stuff? And so anyway, this came to that. Ended up James Fox interviewed me for his latest movie, the Program, and at that time I didn't have any plans to go public at all. I was not going to appear with my face or my voice in the movie, but that all kind of changed New Year's of 2023, and that's when my name got accidentally posted out there in the public, and things started heating up. I still have my job at NSA at the time, so I had to explain myself pretty quickly and to all my leadership to let them know that this was something that was happening and I couldn't stop it. And we had to come up with a game plan. So eventually I just thought, oh, well, I can't stop it. I may as well go public. Kind of had some of my intelligence analyst buddies that were also on the UAP Task Force forum, and they were telling me that somebody on X Space was talking about me and they were getting some things wrong, and that just was the thing that kind of pushed me out into the light for the final time. So it was kind of an accident that I went public. You can see the program. I give a really good rendition. James Fox did a fantastic job. Him and his crew did a fantastic job of showing my story along with a lot of other people's in that movie. So I would highly suggest you get out there and go get yourself a live stream of that and see it. It's got a lot more than just my story, let me put it that way. He does a great job every time he does it. So I've been on that track. I've been doing a lot of spaces since I went public. I feel like the one thing that the disclosure crew, who I do support wholeheartedly, hadn't done a lot of, and that was to reach out to the public and to speak to you guys to kind of inform you, at least from a whistleblower standpoint, and somebody who knows a lot of the other figureheads in the UAP, community. Kind of my thoughts on things, because a lot of times, you get into spaces, you don't always get all the right ideas out there, and sometimes we latch into things that really aren't in line with what was going on. So I've been glad to kind of look and ask questions with my cohorts behind the scenes and answer you guys' questions, as well as impart my knowledge and experience of what I know about the same things that you guys are talking about. So hopefully we're between the two of us and or you guys as the audience and myself, hopefully we're edifying each other and getting closer to the truth each time. And that's my intent, really. I've been on what I call mission ever since I testified to Congress, because I knew that that was going to be closing a door and opening another. And what I mean by going on mission, it's the same thing as if I was deploying. Never know when you're deploying if you're going to come back alive or not. And that's kind of the way I looked at it with this testimony. I didn't know what was going to happen. I had no idea. And yeah, I've had some retribution taken out on me too. So it's not been as severe as what David Grush and some of the others had to go through, but I have suffered. They've taken my clearance. I've had trouble getting a job in the career field that I've been trained to do. So yeah, there's still some struggles I'm going through, but I'm managing through. And that's my story in a nutshell. I'm a father of 6, so I don't care what you guys say. I've been through hell and back, and that should square it up with my backstory. So that's me in a nutshell, in case you didn't know who I was.
Thanks, Jason. And God bless you and your family. That's amazing. I'm trying to get like you. I want 6 kids one day.
Yeah, I have to say, I never regretted it, but there were some times when I was like, oh my gosh, what's happening?
I can only imagine.
Yep.
So last night there was a director from MUFON that was in one of the spaces, the UFO spaces, and
Mm.
he released a photograph of a UFO, or of an alien being from a crash. I linked
Yes.
it to the top. He got it from Lou Elizondo.
Yep.
Have you ever seen this photo before?
Yes.
Really?
I've seen that probably about 5 or more years back. Yeah.
What's your take on that? Can you talk about that a little bit, and who showed it to
Well,
you?
it's very much the same thing as the alien autopsy. Um, the If this was faked, it was a very good fake in my book. It looks very realistic because I've seen so many different photos of aliens and UAP. Um, at a glance, sometimes you kind of get a feeling for it after a while, and that's kind of where I'm at with it. And this one looks to me genuine. At least it deserves further analysis. And I think there's a backstory that goes along with it as well. That it was part of the retrieval process and everything. And I just need to tell you guys here and now, since I just brought up retrievals, that's been the hardest thing for me to discuss with folks. Is on one hand, they want to talk about UAP and all the vanilla stuff, but the reality of retrievals is it's messy. Just as Jake Barber came out about retrievals, that he says that certain people can show up, and yeah, he's had to have gunfire, and he's lost some people, and that is a fact. And you can imagine that the NHI that they are retrieving and the craft that they're retrieving, some give up easily, some don't. Some fight to the death. So there are teams that take care of that kind of stuff too. So I'm just letting you know that there's a reality to this that people don't like to hear about, because they're still in that phase 1 of, are UAP even real? But if you've been behind the veil like I have, and Jake Barber and some of the other whistleblowers, the reality is that, yeah, there's a very violent part to this. And I'm just wanting to let people know that that's part of the logic that we need to get a hold of, is that, it's one thing to think we're alone, or think that we're not alone. But if we're not alone, that means there's civilizations out there that are more advanced than us. That means we're talking about people that have governance of their own. They have their own cultures. They've got their own laws that they abide by. And of course, if they're talking to each other, then there must be some sort of a galactic or communal set of laws, just like we have a hierarchy of law that goes from local authorities all the way up to the supreme courts of our nation, and then onward and upward. We've yet to achieve a planetary wide um, system of laws, but we do have at least some meeting spaces that we get together. And that's something that all need to take home with you and think about, because I'm not saying you have to believe me wholeheartedly, but if you're still playing with the idea, those are some of the realities that you need to think of when you think logically through some of the scenarios that we're hearing people give testimony about. And I just wanted to make sure you guys understood that those are some of the very first beginnings of getting uh, your mindset correct, because it's one thing to say, I don't think we're alone, but it's quite another that if you really want to go down that path, you have a series of logical steps you should go through, and I'm trying to encourage you down that right path.
Yeah, 100%. I'm convinced, that UFOs are real, that we're not alone. I've seen a UFO up close. It was about 8 feet away from me.
Mm.
Um,
8 feet.
yeah, maybe 10 feet,
Mm-hmm.
and and it was life changing. It ended up flying off, and then somehow like disappearing in front of my eyes. Um, just blinked out of existence. And
Was that with you and Andrea when you guys were?
yeah, I was with Andrea and Anissa, and we were in Miami. They were friends that I met online that we ended up having a meetup, and we, have talked about this sort of stuff for hours, and then ended up seeing one up close.
Wow.
Um, and it was just, life changing. So when we start talking about some of the more violent aspects of it all, I mean, like, I think I'm ready. I definitely would love to learn more about that kind of stuff. And going back to the photograph, though, where did you get access to the photo? Did you see it through Lou, or was this from somebody else that you got to see it like 4 or 5 years ago?
Yeah, it was probably just through the network of analysts that were working on the UAP task force, that we're all friends. We kind of like have groups in different social media platforms. And yeah, we threw around some photos. We've tossed around ideas about things. And that photo, I believe, came up in one of them. If not, it was during another conversation with some other similar, friends that I knew of that were in my professional circles. And that's where I first got exposed to that. But it was not for a professional, in-depth analysis of that picture. However, we did discuss, or I have discussed it with some other friends of mine, and yeah, this is the one that kind of scratch your head about.
Right, and it's believed that it's probably from a crash retrieval operation, like you said.
Yeah, because you can see some damage to the skin on that creature. If that's a real body, then yeah, it definitely looks like it suffered some trauma.
Right, 100%. It looks like burn marks or something like that.
Yeah, the patchiness and everything. That's very. Um, it's hard to. Well, it's easy to spray paint stuff on people's face, but it's hard to make it look real sometimes.
Mm,
And that's one of the things that I find. After you've been around people that have been injured before, um, you definitely see some things like that where you can understand that this, because one of the things we did when we trained in the Air Force was just to have fake cuts and things like this to train each other on how to do self-aid buddy care on your friends. And we used to use fake uh, makeup and stuff like that to do those things. So um, got exposure to that, as well as the reality of seeing people that do actually have trauma or punctures to their body or burns. So both of those. This one just looks real to me.
is, is this kind of like any resemblance to the creatures that you had spoken about that you ended up getting into like a
Mm.
scuffle with?
Um, this one, no, I didn't get into a scuffle with one like this. I would say that the encounter I had in the desert in the Nellis Test Range, that the similarity of the alien picture is that, yeah, I don't believe it has ears either. It does have large eyes, which are about the same size as the person that I met in the desert, and things like that. But then there's things that are not the same, like the chin um, is not pronounced, the nose likewise. So there's definitely some differences, but I'd say overall, though, it does fit. All of the things that people say about these encounters. A lot of them are, humanoid. Head, torso, 2 arms, 2 legs, that sort of a thing. So this falls right in with the common uh, general description of a creature from another planet.
Yeah, 100%. It makes me wonder like how many different types of aliens there are, like how many species there might actually be.
Uh-oh.
Um,
Well, my personal take is, if we can't even count the number of stars at this point, we just have estimates. And every time we have another telescope that can look further into space, we find even more. Um, and even if there's only a handful, like, of planets that are in our own galaxy that are inhabited, if you extrapolate that to the trillions upon trillions of others that are out there, I would say that if you can imagine it, it's probably existing somewhere in this universe of ours. And you're going to get everything from humanoid-looking stuff to everything on both ends of the extreme. You're going to find stuff that doesn't look like us, other things that are, you know, um, very strange looking, like tentacles maybe, and things like this. There's been some reports of those types of beings being on our planet as well, from firsthand witnesses. Um, So you kind of have to take that into context as well, is that it's not just, a Nordic is the only one that people are seeing. That's not the case. There seems to be a whole plethora of these beings coming and going.
100%. I did a bunch of work on the like putting a body of work together to present revolved around the precognitive sentient phenomenon, which
Mm-hmm.
is, an aspect of this phenomenon that was coined by Colm Kellier and then popularized by his boss Robert Bigelow,
Mm-hmm.
um, PSP.
Right.
So, is there anything you would like to speak on when it comes to like time dilation or any kind of like phenomenon revolved around precognition when it comes to this phenomenon as a
Mm-hmm.
whole in general?
Yeah, I do have my own thoughts on that. And so it's based on what I've read about quantum physics. I'm not a scientist either. I would call on Bob McGuire or Science Bob to pick up on some of those threads. We did get a chance, I think, in San Francisco where Bob and I got to discuss some of that, and we seem to have similar thoughts about it. But in my mind, I think it also relates to my thoughts on my belief about consciousness and God. Um, and the best way I can describe it is that if we are in the primordial time before anything stirred, in other words, the nothingness was there and it was infinite. It pervaded everything. There was no beginning, no end there. And then something had to act upon it, and it had to have one particular characteristic that this pond or sea of nothingness had, this void that was in the universe before any singularities occurred, or whatever you want to call them. And that, to me, is that particular thing that occurred to stir up and create the first, I guess, waves or vibrations and things like this, and causing some of the matter to bump into each other and eventually form our universe the way we know it now. Um, that was a conscious act. In other words, from that sort of pond of nothingness that had no movement whatsoever, something that had to be able to act of its own volition. In other words, the very first conscious thought had to be just as powerful and just as infinite to act upon it. And then things could start moving around. And to me, that's the first conscious thought. And I also think it follows that if you follow that logic, that everything that exists was originated by that consciousness. Therefore, there is some kind of connectedness. And then when you get into the Bible and what it states about, God himself, and, you got Moses saying, well, who do I say you are? And God just responds, tell them I am. And that's his, the best response I could think of for God is that, yeah, he just literally was. And that's the beginning of what we know as consciousness. And then on top of that, it also states in the scriptures that, that God can see us from beginning to end, from birth till death, and even beyond that. And it's what they call a biblical mystery. That how can you do that? Well, there has to be some kind of a person or a consciousness that is able to observe everything without, time getting in the way. In other words, you can take in all of what's happened, all that was, all that is, and all that's to come, and and be able to see it.
So to be clear, do you believe in God?
Yes, I did struggle with it quite a bit when I was going through the legacy program, because I kept on. Well, the way it went with me is just prior to the program, I had kind of fallen away, which was, I was very close to God on my first duty assignment, but then I kind of fell away. Started partying when I went to Germany, and then when I went to Nellis, things changed again, and I ended up getting very close to God, and that's when, at the same time, I actually went into the program and was exposed to all this high strangeness, and I just kept on thinking, how do I parse this? So it forced me to kind of pick up my Bible again and read it from front to back like I had before, and right out off the bat in Genesis, it states a lot of different types of visitations, and some of them dealing with Abraham actually having lunch with what he called sons of God. He didn't call them humans. He didn't call them kings. He didn't call them anything else other than sons of God. And that's different from what they talk about as sons of man. Sons of man are us, that's humans. But sons of God are considered angels. So these angels or sons of God came into his tent after he kind of forcefully encouraged them to come have some food with them. So here, these are tangible beings in the Bible. And so this kind of continues on in different venues with physical manifestations, and you have different types of angels even being discussed when the fall of Lucifer with his 1/6 or was it a sixth of the angels being cast down to the earth. And there's seraphim, cherubim, you name it. There's several of them mentioned in the scriptures, and you can look it up for yourself. I don't have a list of them right now, and I don't want to break loose right now to go research it. But
I'm familiar. I'm familiar.
yeah, so there's different types of angels, and that to me is like, okay, well, that definitely states if you believe in the Bible, we're not alone. And there are other beings. There are angels, whether you want to call them fluffy clouds or not. These are living beings, conscious beings. And so is God. He's another living being. And then you've got the prophet beings also being spoken of. And these are very strange, 4 heads, multiple wings, multiple feet, legs, whatever. Some of them looking like wheels within wheels, but they moved with the Spirit of God. They were living creatures, according to the prophets, that dreamt or saw these things coming down from the clouds. So you have a lot of these sorts of connections that I started to go through as I reread the Bible. And I'm like, okay, well, I can kind of parse it a little bit better now. And the way I thought of it was just that up until that point, I had read the Bible, but I had not seen the creatures that were in the Bible. And I think all I had done is being in a legacy program exposed me to the reality of these creatures being alive. And I was like, this is no different. And indeed, I can even tell you that, yeah, within the program, there are factions. There were the good ones and the bad ones, and the ones you didn't know what they were. Those were all part of me going through that program and hearing about these things. And so, yeah, there are even factions, good, bad, or all of that, again, in the Bible. Um, and yeah, we're part of it. So that's how I parsed it. That's how it kind of occurred to me. And so it ended up making my belief in God all the stronger, because not only did I know what was written in the Bible, I had actually seen parts of these creatures that now I could add to my experience.
That is incredible. Maze, I saw your hand up. Do you want to ask a question, or did you have something you wanted to chime in with? If not, I can keep going. I got a bunch of questions, but I want to pass it to you first.
Yeah, so thank you. I did have a question, and then when you went into the precognition, I was so interested in what you were going to bring in that it kind of escaped me, so I put my hand down. But y- so like I don't know if you remember this, Augustus, but there was a time where we were kind of going through all like of the almanac, the alien almanac. Do you
Oh
remember
yeah.
that? Do you remember?
I remember
Like
that.
so.
Yeah.
And it was interesting, like the Arcturians, it was the Arcturians, oh my God, Palladians, and it was like
Palladians.
right.
The
So they were like more,
Lyrians, all that.
yes, 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 and they were the more of the earthbound ones, and then there was like all like, and it's so interesting to me that like if there it seems to be like when you think about the massiveness and just the diversity that we see just within earth, the microcosm to the macrocosm, it just seems like it would be true, and but when it comes to the whole interstellar travel and craft, I just feel like there's a smarter way than that of probably somehow in quantum physics, like folding space, if you will, or advanced
Teleportation.
science to, yeah, teleportation and whatnot. But there's also something I think pretty significant or remarkable about the ocean, and that really being the way out and in somewhere like deep in the ocean. Have you heard anything like that? Or is it truly interstellar travel?
Um, there are mediums that do help in certain types of technology and propulsion, I believe, uh, as Bob would tell you. Um, and there are, in my mind, there's also dimensionality that is higher or lower, and that's already scientifically proven. Two dimensionalism, we're four dimensional. So yeah, we can actually traverse from one place to another that a two dimensional being could not. And just by simply, say you got that piece of paper, that's a two dimensional being, right? Well, you can only go, left, right, up, down on that piece of paper, whereas we can hover above it, below it, go around it, and all these other things that he can't do. And we can actually appear in a place where he thinks that we look like we appeared to his left, and now we're on his right, when in fact we actually just moved our finger from touching the left hand side of the paper to the right hand side of the paper. You see, so that's just a very basic description of how dimensionality can seem as though you're traversing huge amounts of space. And I can't remember how many dimensions that science has already stated, but I think it's 10 or 12 or something like that, if not.
11, I thought, but yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, I'd say that yes, it's very, very, well, I'd say it's also backed up by some experiencers that have had been taken aboard some of these craft that are interdimensional. I remember one in particular that I can't remember all of the pedigree on it, but I remember an individual being taken dimensionally in a craft that had what looked like an M&M symbol on the bottom of it, and on the inside there's like this jelly weird stuff that he could still breathe, but it was kind of like a medium that he and the being were in, and they went dimensionally into where this being lived. And he said that they had a lot of the same things that we did, but you could definitely see that things were different there. while they were going through the dimensions and things like that. So very hard to get your head wrapped around, because I think as four-dimensional beings, just like it's hard for a two-dimensional being to think of a four-dimensional world, and onward and upward, likewise, we find it difficult to do the same. And that's my take on it. But yeah, I think that it's backed up by a lot of experiencers and stuff.
Yeah, I think Augustus, the craft that you saw disappeared into the ocean. It was just like, I think or if I recall you telling the story correctly, I remember when it
Well,
happened.
well, what happened, Jason Jay, was
Yeah.
I'm sitting on a balcony and I'm like 9 flights up, and it's around midnight, and I'm sitting there with two other people,
Right.
and all of a sudden, a orb of light, 3 to 5 feet across, maybe 6 feet across, comes swooping down out of the top right corner of our view,
Hmm.
and
How big?
and in front of the balcony, and it hovers in front of our balcony for about a second or two.
Wow.
8 feet, maybe 10 feet away from the balcony. If
Yep.
I would have jumped off the balcony like spread eagle, to try to grab it, I could have caught it. It was that close.
Wow.
And then it shot out over the bay that we were looking out over,
Right.
from the balcony. And as it got maybe like 200 yards away, 300 yards away, it began to like expand and contract like pizza dough or like Play-Doh. And then it just vanished. And then we're not sure if like it went into the water because it was at night and I couldn't see how far above the water it was, or if it just, snap of a finger vanished.
Well, I'd say that
So
did you get any sort of a feeling when it came?
yeah, don't blink.
I
Don't
had,
blink, and check the time. And then it almost felt like I just was the one who saw it. Like it was like only revealed itself to me. But then I checked with my two friends who also saw it, and then I was like, maybe we're hallucinating. So I closed my eyes,
Mm-hmm.
and then in like my eyelids had the light trail burned into my eyelids.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've had that before. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like as if a flashlight was in your face moving around, and then you close your eyes and you see the light trail.
Yep.
It was just like that. So I knew it was physical.
Yeah, because your eyes wouldn't react that way unless there was a bright light in front of you.
Did you suffer any ill health effects?
I was like crying a little bit.
And how big in diameter did you say the craft was?
I couldn't tell if it was like 3 feet or 5 feet, but it was pretty big. It
Oh,
was it was pretty big.
okay. Wow, that's amazing. I know I haven't said anything since San Francisco, but uh, I had an orb experience the other night. We had a big storm. All the power went out here just over this last weekend, and it went out for probably a little over 24 hours, I guess. And I have a CPAP machine, so I can't really sleep very well without it. And my battery went dead on it, so I ended up waking up and went out to the living room, and an orb appeared. It was very bright because everything's dark, even the street lights are gone. But this about half a foot to a foot diameter, bright white light appears on the back porch. It traverses through the back door that I have by my kitchen, and then it disappears momentarily, and then it reappears almost in front of me, only about 4 feet away from me, and then it makes a right hand turn towards the wall and disappears into the wall. And as it disappears, it makes this like chirp, kind of like very quick chirp. And then, as I'm sitting by the window in my living room where I'm sitting on the couch, in the same direction that the orb disappeared through the wall, 3 orbs started to appear in the trees and started weaving in and out of them. And they went from, I guess, about maybe 30 yards away to about 25 yards away. They came out of the tree line, then they went back into the tree line, and then I lost sight of them as they went down the road. So that I can't explain. I've never seen. That's the first time I've had orbs ever, and I've never had those before. And I thought maybe that was ball lightning because the storm had been there, and I had no idea what to think of it. But very similar to what you're talking about. That's why I asked how big the orb was that you saw, because mine were kind of small. So
It's so weird, like on how like personal it can get, you know?
yeah, I mean, I can't explain that. I mean, who knows? Maybe it was ball lightning, but I've never heard of it reacting that way. I know it can go through walls and things like that. I can't explain the chirp.
Are you
Nor anything
sorry to
else.
cut you off.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, are you familiar with the MH370 orb video?
Yeah, you're gonna get too macabre. I'll spun up on that. Anyway, yes, I have heard about that, and that was a tough one to analyze until some people found certain frames where it looked like there was a jump, I guess, of the graphics and things. Um, so yeah, it looked pretty realistic, and honestly, the craft has never been found. I find that kind of telling. And then on top of that, the track that it had been, they say that it was tracking. It looked like it had gained altitude and then disappeared, kind of a thing. And then every once in a while, you got a ping off of some of the engine nacelles or something, and they didn't know whether that meant it had broken up in flight and that the engine nacelle was still flying around, or if it was the whole craft or not. So still some
That is kind of common too. And Jason, did you ever hear about any kind of airliner abductions separate of MH370? Because if you look in history, there's a few of these other examples where it seems like even like 3 orbs were around a plane. And you know what I mean? There's
Oh
the
yeah,
Atlantic case.
yeah, and there's the Foo Fighters and things like this during World War II. Yeah, a lot of the pilots said the same thing. They had the ability to fly in and out of the craft structure. Its fuselage and everything. Yeah, very. It's something that's been around for a long time, and you have all these fairy tales as well. Some of the fairy tales call them will o' the wisps, and they're all orbs, and they seem to be sentient also because when they're talked of, a lot of people claim that they are contacted or they feel like living beings. They're just in a different energy form or something. And I have to tell you, I think we kind of touched. I'm not sure, Bob, if we touched on this when we were in San Francisco, but my mom used to work on a ward as a registered nurse in England, and she was assigned to the ward where people were passing away, or had terminal illnesses. And she said some guy that was terminally ill called her over, and he said, "There goes another one." She's like, "What do you mean?" He's like, I've been seeing it all day and all night. He says, every time somebody dies, I see this like egg-shaped orb exit their body and go up through the ceiling and then disappear. And she's like, "Oh no!" He's like, "Oh, another one just happened. It's that guy over there in the bed." He pointed at him. She's thinking to herself, "Oh, sure, this guy's full of it. He's either hallucinating or something else." So she goes over there and checks the guy. He's dead. And so she had to take note of that. She's like, "I guess there might be a way that people, when we exit our body, that's a new form of us. It looks like an orb in our way of thinking and observing." But yeah, I could totally get that.
That's a fascinating perspective. My godparents, when they got into old folks' homes, kind of hospice type thing,
Mm-hmm.
it really changes their perspective too, right? Being around so much death, but like in a weird kind of natural way. And yeah, hearing stories like that from people when they're close to it, it's wild.
Yeah, it is. So yeah, and here it was. My mom never really had a very religious sort of a tint to her life, but here it was something that she couldn't explain. And likewise, a lot of other people. So we have a lot to learn. I don't want to be bagging on science and all that, especially with Science Bob here. Um, But we do have a lot to learn, and we can't just think that all of this stuff is a bunch of hooey. If there's been so many people that have witnessed it, we just don't have a way to measure it, I think is really what we're saying. And until science can catch up on that, I think that's something that we should continue to pursue.
I think that people really love listening to you, Jason, because you're able to keep it real and you don't get into the minutia of, too much technical terminology and coming off, like too, much. You're very down to earth. You're a very polite guy. You are a pleasure to talk to. You're super open minded. And it has been just so far in the conversation a real pleasure to get to know you, man.
Oh yeah, he's awesome. I've seen him also stick up for people on some of that harassment beat stuff too, that
Oh yeah.
a lot of these other big names don't ever want to touch. So he's all, and I've seen him be demeaned in spaces and just remain calm. So yeah, awesome, Jason.
Okay, I'm going to hook you up with my wife. You can tell her all those things because she doesn't believe
Okay, yeah.
it.
Yo, we do have some hands
Yeah,
on stage.
Yeah,
Go
let's
ahead,
do that.
Bob. What were you gonna say?
yeah. I just wanted to say that listening to Jason, for the last hour is like our conversations. He could carry on a technical conversation and make good remarks, and when in his relating of experience, uh, you gather, if assuming the statement's accurate, you gather data that's good to do analysis. Jason's a smart guy.
Gee, thanks. But
One hundred
anyway,
percent.
well, the way I look at it though, Bob, is just that I guess being exposed to some of this higher exotic tech in the legacy program, I heard a lot of this stuff, but I didn't understand the science behind it necessarily. And the other part of that is I read so much technical data, and we had a scientist on our analysis group when we went out on missions, and he would have to explain some of the other stuff like you did for me when we were in San Francisco. And I find it kind of easy keeping up on that. However, I forget technical terms. I can barely remember all the technical names of all my medicines that I have to take, let alone, all the things you probably have floating around in your head there, Bob, and anybody else that's in the audience that's got a science background. But I think just from that experience in the legacy program, it opened my mind, and I think it would do that the same for anybody else that gets exposed to that level of technical detail, where you may not be a scientist, but you've heard enough about it to where you know that these things do fly with technologies that are made out of electromagnetic technologies in some cases. In other cases, they might be nuclear or atomic or what have you. There's tons of different ways to get to the states of matter that are required to get through the, propulsion problems that we currently are at. And it seems like most of the technologies that we should be using to reach the speed of light or beyond are the ones that quickly, a scientist makes a breakthrough and all of a sudden they disappear or they're dead. And I find that kind of telling.
We got some hands, Jay. I'm gonna get to some hands, but it is telling. Whew, that's heavy stuff when people start disappearing and people start dying and
Yeah.
stuff like that. I wanted to ask you about Phil Schneider and your thoughts on his testimony, but we don't got to go there right now. We
Yeah.
want to we could talk to some of the hands here.
Okay.
Let's go in order: Darren, and then Jay Reacher, and then Money Penny. That's the order you guys came up in. That's the order you'll go ask questions in.
Thank you, appreciate it. Hi, Augustus, Maze, Red Panda, and hello,
What up, Darren?
Jason.
Hey,
It's always
Darren. Well met again.
hello, mate. Hi, Jason. It's always nice, just hearing you. You've got an amazing consciousness. That's really where I'm going with this. Like let me take you back to when you had the encounter with the alien. You telepathically downloaded that star map and the instructions into your consciousness.
Yeah.
Would you say that this fundamentally changed you spiritually, Jason? And what message did it leave you to share with us?
It wasn't like a direct message, but yes, there was definitely a level of civility in the person's telepathic communication with me. And as I was telling you before, that, yeah, not only could he share, you know, literally like a schematic map of what um, people would say are like a technical manual on his craft into my head, and also the star map that I can't explain. But when once he relayed that to me, it's like emblazoned in my brain. Um, it's like I've got a photographic memory for certain things, but for those things, they're just like permanently part of my brain now. On the spiritual side of that, yes. Um, it wasn't so much a direct message to me, but there was a peacefulness, a calmness, a respectfulness, all those things that when he communicated, you could feel at the level that he was feeling them. In other words, if you can imagine that you are so tuned into your morning meditative thoughts, like say you open your Bible and you do your devotion, you pray, and the highest ideal for your day is to live and breathe, loving your brothers and sisters, all day long. Um, or like you meditate and you tune into your body and you tune into that peaceful place and you want to carry that through the rest of your day. That's what it felt like. If you can imagine being able to maintain that, that's what this guy had that I did not. I felt like a complete mess compared to him. My emotions were going from extremes of answering his questions to being fearful, thinking my life was in danger. And he even looked away a couple of times when I did that, and I just felt embarrassed. But I've also tried to attain that same level of calmness now ever since then. I've done a pretty good job, I think. And I think that shows, from what some of the comments you've made and other people have made about, um, me being respectful. That comes from that experience, really. That,
Oh wow.
that is what I feel I should be. I know I can do it.
So what are you saying, Jason? You're saying before that encounter, you wasn't this cool, calm, collected
I was a
person?
quiet person and I was respectful, but emotionally, I was not. I was a freaking roller coaster until that event. And then when I felt that level headed, yes, he had emotions, strong emotions, but he didn't allow them to control him. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like, you're really pissed off at somebody that rear ended you, but you just don't give in to, getting out of your car and putting them in, taking a couple of teeth out, from the.
Jason, when you had this transfer, right? Because also I've heard you say that like you kind of felt the history of his entire people and like there was all this stuff. Did you feel like it was a biological thing of that specific species, or do you think it was like an augmentation or some kind of technology that was allowing this entity to do that?
I feel like we all have the ability. It was so natural. There was no headache, no dizziness, no nothing. It was as if it was just another way to communicate other than using your mouth. Um, and that's really what it was. It was so natural feeling. I think that it's just part of us. And I think that it also goes along with my belief. And this is another thing I had to tackle is that I started thinking about the telepathic part and it started to shake me again. And then I was like, well, wait a minute. It says that God looks at a man or a woman's heart and can and knows their thoughts. So I know that this exists on even in the realm of Christianity or what have you, and a lot of the other world religions do too. So there seems to be something we've lost, maybe millennia ago, where maybe this was a part of us, and we've been gradually shut down, or we've taught ourselves or trained ourselves.
And there's kind of hints of it too, like when someone dies and people, you hear so many stories like, oh, so and so died and I just felt it, right? I feel like you're saying it's kind of that kind of connection,
Exactly. Yes. And
just amplified.
yeah, and honestly, I'd say that those little instances where I just thought were strange feelings nowadays, since I felt that, I literally was talking face to face telepathically with one of them, that I definitely know the difference now. And when those thoughts do come, and I know they're not from me, and yeah, it's very easy to discern that now. And I've always said it, that I think a lot of people that view NHIs or aliens as being a threat, that I find that kind of highly, I don't know how to put it, that it's not their real desire. A lot of them don't feel that way. I'm sure there's some that do, that are very evil minded, or they don't mind, or they have a different set of morals that they don't mind enslaving peoples. Apparently, that's something that happened with the Anunnaki and stuff like that. But there's all these different parts of it that seem to come true. But The telepathy part of that is something that I think I feel now, and I can discern better what's coming from me, what I feel like, it's coming as a download, as people say, or whatever. But when these beings can be a threat, how do you protect yourself from that? Well, you got to know yourself, and then you understand the difference, because that's all I did that day. And what I mean by that is just the simple act that when I was there, he was disgusted with the people that were from Groom Lake. He called them barbarians and murderers, and I felt that strong emotion and well up inside of me as if it was my own emotion. But then I had the wherewithal and awareness to realize, wait a minute, I've got no reason to be disgusted by these people. Therefore, this emotion is coming from him. And that's the kind of level of awareness, self-awareness you need to have. Like if you're all of a sudden angry, um, and you were just peaceful a moment ago, that might be a good indication that, maybe that's manipulation, or, something else is going on. Because in the Bible and in my experience through the Legacy Program, that's some of the stuff that goes on. And even other experiencers and people that have had run-ins with these beings, they say the same thing, that it's a real horror show for them,
Can you elaborate on the legacy probe? Because I've heard you say that too before, where it's like some of these thoughts that people have, like it's some of these intrusive thoughts could be from an entity. Did you like come across that specific thing?
I only came across that after I got kicked out of that program. It was pretty much a dumb thing. I took my kids to the zoo on a weekend on a mission, and they looked at that as the greatest horrifying condition of a loser as you could possibly be in the program, and that's what got kicked me out. But only after I got kicked out, that's when I had this encounter in the desert. That's when I felt my first telepathic communication. Now, I actually have looked back in time over my childhood, and I would say that yes, I had similar feelings, but I didn't know it was telepathy. But yes, it's something that has occurred to me or happened to me several times in life that I can think of. And who knows, maybe there's even more sneaky emotions that got by me and I didn't even notice, just because I wasn't in control of myself or discerning enough. And I'm sure that happens to everybody.
Yeah,
Cool.
100%. All right, Jay Reach or Rob, I don't know who goes first, but you guys are good friends, so you guys work it out. Whoever goes first, the other
Go,
one goes
bro.
second.
All right. Hey, thanks for hosting, Augustus. Always good to see you, my friend. Jason, fascinating conversation. I got just basically two things in a question. I've experienced the Tic Tac UFOs
Oh, wow.
twice, about 7 to 8 years apart. First was I was driving up an expressway watching a plane land. I do believe we have zero gravity in that. I don't want to go any further, but I believe that exists in these large planes. And and as I was going back to put my eye on the road, trailing behind it was this. It was probably 2 to 3 times the size of it, a little bit further out. A Tic Tac, kind of a gray, dark cloudish, but perfectly cylinder thing that I followed as far as I could without driving off the road. But yeah, that was the first time. And then about 7 years ago, I was in, believe it or not, the Pine Barrens of New Jersey.
Oh, wow. That's a scary place.
And so my daughter was playing in a soccer tournament, and they had like 46 soccer fields, but I could just see forever on the horizon, and it's flat. And so I saw some clouds to the right, and I looked to the left, and I see this thing coming out of, and we're talking probably 6, 8, 10 miles away, coming out of the pines. Again, another Tic Tac.
Hmm.
It went up in the skyline. I mean, I'm talking completely vertically up, straight up, very slow,
Hmm.
and it got to a certain maybe 40 degrees, and then it decided to move to the right.
Hmm.
And at that point, I had to tell some people, and I was like, "You guys seeing this?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, we see it." And there was probably 4 or 5 other people, parents there, and it went maybe uh, 60 more degrees in that, and then went in the clouds, and it was gone. Never
Wow.
came out of the clouds.
Now,
It was wild experience.
did it rotate on its axis like we see on some of these?
It was more because I think of the distance. I could not tell. I didn't see
Oh,
any reflections. I didn't see anything like that.
okay.
Yeah, it was pretty intense. I snapped a picture. I got it on a thumb drive somewhere, but it's barely viewable.
Hmm.
But
Well,
current events. Oh, go
I
ahead.
was going to
Go ahead.
say, so you said there were some years in between. So when was the first event?
Probably around 2006, seven.
Okay, so these are fairly
The other,
recent.
yeah, and the other one was about 2014, 2015, somewhere around there.
Interesting. Wow.
Yeah. But when all this New Jersey stuff came up, last year, I was like, holy cow, that's where I saw it. And the Pine Barrens is, a hotbed. So
Yeah.
that made me kind of rethink it again.
Yeah, I've heard all kinds of crazy stories about the Pine Barrens, man. Bigfoot included.
Yeah,
The
and then
Jersey Devil.
Yep.
the Jersey Devil. Yeah, exactly.
And there's no cell
Um,
service out there either, which makes it even a little bit more,
Yeah,
you
it's
know.
like a dead zone. There are dead zones, by the way. Um,
yeah.
that's usually where you find some clandestine sites because they like to go in these zones of silence. Um,
Oh,
yeah, and apparently
wow.
my dad used to tell me about satellites that would go out of commission over certain parts of our Earth uh, due to some interference or some other energy that interfered with the satellites.
So either natural or man-made, right?
Yeah, yeah, and so it extends all the way out into space sometimes. Yeah.
Holy cow. I posted up top there, if you scroll over one, and this is what I wanted to ask you. Can you interpret what Elon posted a couple days ago? I think that's when he was in the riff with Trump on the 8th.
Mm-hmm.
He said, whatever happens, we've got the spaceships and they do not. I don't know who they is. I don't know what spaceships he's referring to, ones that we've acquired or his. I just thought it was pretty ominous that he threw that out there.
Yeah, and I would say that that's my impression. What I'm thinking he's talking about is the fact that when we're talking about our adversaries, and have they been contacted? Are they building technologies with exotic tech, as we do? I think a lot of times, what I believe is that our allies know that we have the resources to research this stuff, and I know for a fact that there's places all around the planet that are laboratories for this type of work that I know of that are part of the program, because you got to think this exotic tech takes some very strange equipment to analyze and reverse engineer. So you're talking about these one-off labs, really, like CERN, or I don't know if I pronounced that right, but just places like that where you can do certain kinds of experiments where you can't do it everywhere else. So there's that aspect to the work that's in that program. And if the adversaries are able to do likewise, I don't think it's as robust. So maybe Lou is alluding to the fact that we have some reverse engineered craft and they do not, because that would be in line with what he would want to discuss with the president on the national security level. And
Sure. And he wanted to remind everybody where we stand.
exactly. So it'd be a good
Gotcha. Yeah.
right. So it'd be a good statement to make in a briefing with the president, is what I'm thinking.
That's wild. That's all I have, Jason. Thank you so much. I can't wait to hear from Moneypenny. Follow her. The research on her plasma,
Oh, I
off
know.
the charts.
Moneypenny and
She
I
does
talk.
so much research.
I
Yeah,
agree. Everybody in
known
the
her many
audience,
years.
yes. Her.
Yeah, she's up on stage.
Yep.
She's got her
I'm
hand
here
raised.
lurking. I am lurking after you, Jason.
I
How
know.
do you
Hey,
like that handoff?
I'm one of those guys that you get in the ring and I don't know.
thanks, Mike.
Yeah. So anyway, good question.
Oh shit! Sorry, Rob. You want to hear from Rob too?
Yeah, I was actually going to tell you what that post was referring to from Elon, and it was not. It was more based around Space Force
Mm-hmm.
and the fact that. So my background's a little different. Some of the people here know it.
Yep.
I am a pilot as well, so I have seen interesting things that we've been told not to report. As an example, where you have something that follows you in front and kind of plays the cat and mouse with you.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So yeah, but back in the 90s, worked on some very high-speed computing
Mhm.
stuff. That's what I was going to ask you. Have you had any interface with the guys out of Wright-Patterson
Oh,
and the multi-level facility there?
yeah, but it's from the 1990s. It's not recent.
Yeah. So, but yeah, no. So it's interesting because a lot of the technologies, especially in the computing, I think has filtered its way out of Wright-Patterson. They've done a lot of, I think, skeletonary pulling apart of things and figured out how to get some of the
Yeah,
computing technologies we have today.
yeah, and I'd say I could attest to that and confirm that. Yeah, that's kind of how it goes. I think about every 5 to 10 years, sometimes the scientists just make a breakthrough, and the next thing they know, they're figuring stuff out. And that's kind of how it goes. Is that you keep hammering away, and sure enough, that somebody comes up with a eureka moment. And there was a lot of those being discussed at Wright Pat, because Wright Pat's kind of a hub for all of the different laboratories and coordinating things, and that's what was going on up there. And so they had their fingers in a lot of different aspects of that, and it's exactly as you described, where it's they're dealing with some things that are very exotic, and they do make a breakthrough here and there.
And Jason, thanks for stepping forward, man. It's not something that's easy to do. So we
Yeah.
appreciate you doing that. So, and I'll hand off to Moneypenny.
Okay.
Hi, Jason. How are
Hey,
you?
how's it going?
Oh my gosh. So, Jason, we did Tithium. We did No Ears on Aliens. And I'll quickly explain for the others because they will think, well, they'll think we're both mad.
Mhm.
So on Joe Rogan, when Jason was interviewed about his experience in the desert with Mr. Blue, I'm going to call him, and I've put a photograph, or it's an AI photograph that I created the first time I heard Jason speak.
Mhm.
And apparently it's not that far off what Jason saw. So it's in the top of the nest if anyone wants to see it. Jason said that he had a communication with the alien, and the alien asked for some Tithium, which at the time, neither Joe Rogan nor Jason knew what it was, but it's actually a component that you need. It's actually a hydrogen isotope that is required in atomic energy production, and it's needed basically to fuel the craft. And then you said, when you got into the car, your colleague in the car shouted out, "He's got no ears." Do you remember that bit?
Yeah, it was just right before I actually had the door partly open when he screamed it, because the individual that was hailing us, the alien, he was only about 10 feet from us as we were slowing down on the dirt road, and that's when he screamed it.
Okay. Yeah, right. So I've got that bit. Now, did you see the craft at all? Because as I recall, the first time you explained this, when he disappeared from your view, he was going towards almost like a big sort of red rock type desert area, and he just disappeared. When you first described it, I don't ever remember you talking about a craft. You just sort of saw him almost walk into the wall of a mountain and he disappeared. Is that correct?
No, actually, the craft was there, because I remember as we were approaching him, I did look to the left, and it is all red rock kind of looking. And there was this, what I thought was a broken helicopter at first, because it was about 50 yards on the north side of the roadway, or off the shoulder of the dirt road we were on. And I didn't see him exit that craft. And besides that, I didn't really, I just kind of glanced at this craft that was there off to the shoulder.
When you first met him, he was walking around the area, because I remember the woman in the coffee thing where you were having coffee said, don't go out, there's this scary thing outside. You went outside, you saw this thing, or this person, this entity. You described the car with your friend in it who said he's got no ears. Did the entity get in the car with you and you drove over to where this
Not that I
crashed
recall.
helicopter
It was mainly,
No.
I stepped out onto the roadway thinking he was hypothermic.
Yeah.
And he actually was kind of running at us as he spotted us driving down the road, and he began to run towards us, and he had a really funny run. It was like he was being pushed away by a hurricane force wind or something. His arms were kind of like flailing around, and not normal, like how we bend our elbows and make a fist.
Yeah.
He wasn't like that at all.
So then how did he get to the place where the crashed or where his spacecraft was, next to this red rock that he disappeared into? How did he get there?
That was, I would think, is just where he ended up for the day. I know that the previous week, that was when a whole bunch of other people that were working at Black Mountain, which is where we were headed for the following Monday. That's where I was going. They all saw this craft fly right by the schoolhouse. That's what we called the building on top of Black Mountain. By the way, for people in the audience, you guys can see Black Mountain where we did our operations. We trained air crews on top of that mountain to survive in a degraded environment where they couldn't use the radios properly and were still required to get bombs on target. And that's what we did, but we call it the schoolhouse. And that UFO the previous week from me going up there had flown right by that building and into the valley. And that's all recorded in a video. So if anybody in the audience wants to look at this video, along with a really good report that was made of it, that's available online. And you just have to look up, UFO, Nellis Test Range UFO of 1994. I think that's the way I searched for it and found it. So you guys can do the same thing. And you guys can look at that and you'll see the craft that I saw that was landed or resting on the desert floor that morning when I came up the following morning. But yeah, you're right. You're remembering.
So you left him walking around and then you saw him the next morning with the thing that looked like the helicopter, and then he disappeared into the thing. But you obviously hadn't found any tithium, so he didn't fly the spacecraft because the spacecraft couldn't fly. So how did he and the spacecraft disappear eventually then?
It was just damaged. And you can see that in the video. And because that was on the Friday before I came down on the following Monday. So he had been probably trapped there on the range all weekend. And that's where I think that lady that was over where you could get gas for the cars and stuff, that's where she stopped me and said there was somebody I shouldn't talk to. I think that's where she ran into him over the weekend, because a lot of the people on range that work there, like the video operators, because the video cameras are all over the range, because if an air crew goes down, they want video of it to figure out what went wrong for flight safety reasons. And they stay there in a nearby town like Beatty or Pahrump or Needles. You know, they actually live up there, so they do have work to do over the weekend sometimes as well. So I think she was up there trying to, maybe fix some of the video cameras, and that's when they stumbled into this video of this craft. So it was quite telling. But yeah, so we met with them.
But you'd seen the craft face to face. You'd been looking at the craft.
Yeah, so it was resting when I encountered the person, and where we stopped to talk to him, or where I talked to him, it was a little bit further down the road, but almost parallel to us when I was talking. It's like I could turn like maybe 45 degrees to the left and I could see the craft. It was that close. It was like 50 yards away, and I got a really good look at it and all that stuff. So, and then after our conversation, he abruptly, when he realized I didn't know where this tintium was, I didn't answer what he needed. He took off without saying goodbye, and he just went back in the craft, and off he went. And as he was flying over the roadway, that's when everybody in the car started coming to, like they'd been zonked out or something. And
yeah. So did you feel any health effects? Sorry, this is my last bit. I've been dreaming about this stuff. So did you feel any health effects the next day? Because you'd been within about 6 or 10 foot of the entity. You didn't feel, I'm looking for radiation. I'm wondering about plasma, obviously, because I'm obsessed by it, obviously, as we all know. But did you feel any nausea, headaches, anxiety, eyesight, not sleeping properly, all those sorts of things, low-level radiation?
The only thing that I felt was that it was very profound, an experience that was very profound. But no, I didn't have any ill effects like a headache or dizziness.
How close were you to him? About 10 foot, you said?
From him, when I was talking to him, he was talking different distance, like 2-3 feet, because that 10 feet away, that's when the guy screamed, "He's got no ears." I was popping the door open, so we coasted to a stop, and when I shut my door, he was directly on the other side of that door. So I shut my door and I looked up and I was like, "Wow, what the heck is this?"
Yeah.
So he was like right there.
Just for those listening, the no ears thing is all about the fact that obviously you're communicating, psionically through thoughts, but it's also the fact that sound waves and light waves, which are, two proponents in things like electromagnetic waves that make plasma, you don't need ears if you're an alien because you're communicating like that, and sound waves are dangerous.
Right.
So this is my whole theory about no alien will ever have ears. So I looked at all these pictures of aliens, and sure enough, they don't have ears.
Yep.
And ears do a lot for our balance too, right? It's kind of interesting to think about.
Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah.
So that's exactly right. And I tend to agree with you that, I didn't think of it, why didn't he have ears? And I couldn't explain it. And then you came up with that because I think it was after I was out in San Francisco with Bob, and that I think you posted something on that. You're like, hey, or it was after Joe Rogan or something.
Yeah.
And you're like, hey, I didn't.
It's luminescence. It's all about the dangers of sound and light waves, and the fact that even God, who said, be quiet in church, let there be silence, all the rest of it, it's all about the effects of the frequency and resonance of waves, and the fact they could be dangerous to the entity. Yeah. And then I looked at all the pictures I could find of recreated pictures of aliens, and none of them have ears.
Yeah, it makes you think about the connectedness and the waveforms that actually are forming our reality, and in a new way. I think that,
Absolutely.
And that's why when we were doing atomic tests, there was a lot of UFO activity, and I believe we've had some people testify to the fact that those tests literally disrupted or maybe even killed a lot of other beings in other dimensions, as well as neighboring. It sent shockwaves through a huge amount of our universe as well.
Well, it's the same
Other
with Dan
dimensions
Burris.
and stuff.
Yeah.
Dan Burris and the J-Rods, there wasn't allowed to be any noise. If there was any noise at all, they were very carefully, apparently the dome, and they were all wearing hazmat suits and whatever. But whenever you approached or went near the J-Rod entity in that capacity, there was no sound. It was really reacting badly if there was any sound at all.
Yes, I've heard that before. And I think I remember reading in another encounter with a guy from Sweden that he was a businessman, and he ended up with an encounter with a race that called themselves Ergans or Iargans, and they describe it that way too. They said that when they communicate with him, because he had continuing communication after the encounter, and would give him downloads through a technology that used radiation of some kind. But they said that any music playing and stuff would disrupt this communication with him. And you're right. Maybe that's an aspect of this telepathy. Is maybe cell phones are bad. Maybe it's too disruptive.
Another Money Penny exclusive, I think. Mm-hmm. Thank you for that, Jason.
Yep.
Hey, Jason, it's Augustus. I just wanted to check in on you. We've been here for about an hour and 15 minutes. Just wanted to see how you're feeling on time.
Well, this is a piece of cake after the 6-hour one I did the first time.
Yeah, I remember.
Jason knows how to space, dude. He knows how to throw down. He'll spend 18 hours in a space if the vibes are right.
Yeah, these guys put me through the bloodbath, man.
Oh, I hope that you're enjoying the good vibes.
Oh, I am. Honestly, I wouldn't be here if I wasn't enjoying it.
All right, cool. So I wanted to ask you something about one of the stories you told in a previous space that ended up creating some backlash that we saw online. Can you talk about that?
Well, I don't want to get into the details because that's when people start, tearing into me, because I don't remember everything that was there. I know that parts of it were telepathic. I will say this about it, though, and this is what we alluded to at the beginning of the space, is that this all had to do with retrievals and the consequences of those retrievals. And that's what I had to be part of, because when I got kicked out, I was either going to get a bullet in the head or do what the hell they said, or I'd never see my wife and kids again. And that was pretty much the ultimatum. So I had to do what I had to do. So anyway, it was always in relation to a retrieval. And sometimes these beings were not cooperative, and they were, fight or flight, and they would kill you if you didn't kill them. And Jake Barber can probably tell you some of that too, because he talked about some of the experiences he had. One was spiritual, the other one was not as spiritual. And then he also alluded to the fact that some of these ended up in very violent ways. And I totally agree with that. Imagine, I don't know why people have a great deal of consternation with this, other than the fact they don't want to hear it. But if you can imagine at some point in the future that we become a spacefaring race and we encounter a similar situation where one of our crews ends up crashing on a planet, and there's other spacecraft nearby that are trying to come and do the rescue and all that stuff, and you end up in a situation like in Virginia, like James Fox has really analyzed. I'd say James Fox is actually probably the expert on that particular incident. But here you have aliens running around trying to save their lives, some of them dying. The remaining evidences all get taken away by none other than the Air Force from America, loading all this crap up in the back and taking and hauling it all away with guns, and everything else. And people are told to shut up and not talk about it. That's pretty much the way things roll. It's very quick so that people don't have a chance to react. As you know, most people are, as soon as they see a badge or a uniform, they just shy away. They don't do anything. That's pretty much my experience too. But sometimes you get some fighters, people that aren't scared. They don't freeze up or nothing, and they want to fight, and they'll go fight you tooth and nail all the way to the end, And yeah, those are the kind of things that are going on and still going on with these retrievals. And that's where that's what I will talk about, is that that's the reality of it. So I don't really know why people, if we were doing similar things out in space and we got to get one of our own crews saved during a down craft, and we have, an alien race or an intelligent race on that planet that are trying to, take off with the bodies and stuff like that, or maybe they're wanting to destroy the bodies because they think they're demons, or we're demons now, and the shoe's on the other foot rather than the NHI. It's us.
It's so reckless, isn't it? Though, wouldn't you like? You would. I'm not blaming you. It's the power structure that set this in place. Like, you would hope it'd be like diplomacy, not shoot on sight. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think it's a byproduct of the culture that it grew out of. You're talking about post World War II. Nobody was getting. You could point a finger at your neighbor and call him a commie, and all this stuff. Nobody trusted anybody, and everything was a threat. So I think what happened was, when that Roswell incident occurred, that we made some pretty bad decisions. That this was all a threat. We didn't know who they were. I think some of the people honestly thought they were communists in diminutive form, as outlandish that sounds to me, with these big heads, and somehow that they'd managed to deform Russian people to make them look like aliens just to fool us back in the 1940s and 50s. Just cockamamie, stupid ideas. But eventually, because they didn't know, of course, there was a threat. And I think they preached it to the Eisenhower during that time frame and said, hey, we don't know what these are. They could be enemies. Even if they are commies, we should treat them as a threat. And even if they're not commies and they're from another planet, we don't know what they're doing to us. Why are they here? They could have laser beams and they could be eating our brains. It was all that kind of an era. And I think they just never died, because it's a very small microcosm of people that are in that program. And honestly, when I was working in those spaces, most of the buildings back there in the 1990s, you walked in them, they smelled like a freaking World War II museum because it was so old. And I think that the culture inside of it is also very old. And I think that's why the bad decisions went from bad to worse and worse. And eventually I asked David Grush, because he knows the other whistleblowers. And when I finally went and did my testimony on Capitol Hill, I asked him straight up, I said, I have always had a concern about this program. Is there any chance, David, that this has gotten any better? And he just said, that's not what I've been hearing. It actually got worse from what you knew back in your day. And I was like, oh my
Damn.
gosh. And I was like, man, why would these people continue doing this stuff? And I think what it really boils down to is those bad decisions that went to worse. Now they've got themselves trapped into it, because now they know that if they did ever come clean, some of them are going to jail.
Keeps on compounding on itself for sure. It feels like.
Right. It's a culture of bad mistakes, really. And it just kills me that that's how it went. That's my, at least that's my theory. That's the way I think it happened.
Yeah. Should we get to the next hand, Augustus, or do you want to flesh that out a little more?
Yeah, let's go to my friend Cheney. And I just want to say hi to my other friends real quick, Wesley and Augustus Adem, who have joined us as well. But Cheney, go ahead.
This is an awesome space, and Jason, thank you so much for sharing your experience. Um, in the like telepathy you talk about, was it a gnosis? Was it just one word, or was it like symbols? And have you ever been put in like a hypnotic state to see if there's some more there that you might not remember?
I've wanted to find a good hypnotist. I've got a couple of people that are pointing me to one because I would like to remember everything. Um, just so I could get my head straight on some of the stuff. But yes, there wasn't, he did speak, but it was in a language I didn't understand. But it was accompanied by telepathic communication also. And the way I've described it to others has been like this. I was like, how on earth could I possibly understand this guy who was talking another language? And then when I thought back on and this happened when I was still in the UAP Task Force Forum. That's where the intel analysts were asking me about the telepathy as well. And they really pressed me and made me think about it really hard. And I'm glad they did, because it made me break it down. Because when I think back to that day, the way I understood what he was saying is, you know how I'm speaking to you now? I'm putting words together, but the meaning of those words are coming out of an emotional state of what that meaning of that word is, and then I speak it. Likewise, you listen to it, but it's going so fast between us, we barely notice. But in this case, when I was talking to the guy, it seemed as though the meaning of what he was about to speak came first, and then the word would exit his mouth, because there's a little microsecond of a delay there, but you can detect it because your mind can think that quickly. And that's what I remember from the communication, is that it was an emotional level understanding. And whether he spoke it or didn't speak it, as long as that emotional level understanding was taking place, it's like you're speaking the same exact language, because it's kind of a symbolic, emotional level stuff about, when I say the word danger to you, emotionally, you know what that means. You know what I mean? That's kind of what it was like. It was just it was an emotional level meaning of the words were hitting me like that. And that's how I understood.
Wow. Yo, I just want to ask everybody who's tuned into the show so far, please share the space, tap the bottom right hand corner, give it a share. We've got 250 people live with only 40 shares, so please share and like the space. We're here with Jason Stans, whistleblower, and this is the preservation of the human race. I'll pass it over to either Wesley or Augustus, see if they got anything cooking.
Yeah, amazing room per usual. Preservation of the human race, by far my favorite group of people I've ever met. Yeah, maybe besides the Marines that I served with. No, you guys beat them actually. Anyways, Moneypenny, Augustus across the pond, Jay Reacher, I'll call you. It's good to see you, sir. Rob W. Wow, we're surrounded by some really amazing minds,
Red Panda
beautiful
Koala.
people. Red, yeah. Hey, man, I always enjoy your insights, dude. You're one of the smarter.
No, I'm just kidding.
And Augustus, he warned me about you when we first met, the very first space back in the RFK, before we knew what was gonna. Anyways, your reputation preceded you, sir. Anyways, as far as what's happening with the room, I guess my only cool thing I got regarding the UAPs and stuff I'm fairly certain I have seen one. It wasn't as extreme as some of y'all's. I think it was the size of an insect. It was more of an insect, very tiny, machine bug looking. It wasn't a drone. It was more like bio, but there was machine light in anyways, it was something cool. I was lucky enough to be on the call with my buddy Prashant, and I told him, he's like, yeah, that's a UAP. It doesn't matter how small it is. Like if it's something like you're describing, that's still a UAP. And yeah, we're at the forefront of something here. Second to my interest in Christianity, The stuff we're talking about here, multidimensional beings. Is there stuff in our airspace that we don't know what it is? Are there whistleblowers willing to come out and tell we the people what's going on? Like this is the bread and butter. This is a lot of the presidents, some of the ones that got shot, I
This
think
is
would
the
have
tip of the
revealed some
spear.
stuff too. This is
We're
the
here
tip
for
of
the
the spear.
juice.
Anyways, I honestly wanted to come up here and say hello to some of my friends, and then I heard you start speaking, and so I went ahead and just shut up and listened. I know when to shut up and listen, and now's the time for that. So appreciate everybody. Hope everyone's having a good one. Holler if you need anything. Over.
Thanks, Wes. Thank you for your service, brother. Love you, man.
Yeah, I'm glad he spoke up because the topic is preservation of the human race, and right after being asked about this threatening part of this entire program and recovery stuff, what is the good side to this? And that's something I wanted to touch on. I should touch on, and really, what are we portraying, to these other beings? Obviously, we're not impressing them. I know that. Everybody would probably agree with that. We would even say that we're not impressing each other either as human beings. We'd probably describe ourselves as being pretty screwed up sometimes, but that we're well intended or have good intentions. So where can we get to a better spot with the legacy folks is another thing I'd like to talk about. And I actually see a win-win situation. And this is what I told Congress, and I've told a lot of the leadership in the UAP realms, is that, well, what is the level ground here that we can play and get out of this realm of the culture that they have homegrown out of this. And what I see is that, yes, there's always going to be an aspect of threat, but it's not all of it. And that's where we have to get a little bit better at this is, we need to start having protocols that are less threatening to these beings when it comes to retrievals. We don't need to have our hands on every stinking piece of technology because look what we do with it. We create weapons with it, all these things are going to help. But the other thing is that the win-win would be the program folks actually can stand to make a lot of money at this because a lot of this technology ends up in private industry like Lockheed Martin, um, you name it, the Skunk Works, the Phantom Works, all these places that have the technologies. Um, they actually can sell some more patents and do it more openly if they just said, okay, yeah, we're not alone. No, I'm not going to tell you what I built for the military because that's national security stuff. But yeah, we're not alone. And by the way, yeah, we do see some application in health and medicine and also in the power production sectors of our society and our industrial complex. These are the kind of discussions that I think they should find quite interesting because um, they can come forward with that kind of stuff. The Congress has already made a nice path forward for them to come in anonymously and discuss these types of things, and they can, create more patents that are more readily available that are beneficial to everyone. And the hard thing, though, is that they are going to still pursue the weaponization of that same technology, and I think that the NHI ultimately will hold that against us. And I don't know how to get around that because I don't see any government on the face of the earth right now being comfortable enough to drop all their weapons knowing that there are dictators and tyrants around that are willing to kick our butts and kill us. And the same thing goes for some of the NHI. We don't know all of their intents. I mean, if we are a melting pot of different agendas, I would say that the galaxy has got a multitude of other agendas. Some for us, some mediocre, don't care, and others that are totally against us. Because say there's a culture of beings out there that are overpopulators, and what their culture is to go from planet to planet, colonize it, and if anything's living there that gets in your way, they kill it. That might be the way they run their lives, you know. And apparently, there's some people that already have claimed that they've run into those kinds of beings, and that they've also conducted their own wars between each other in different factions. I think um, Mays, and you talked about that when you're saying you're going through the plethora of all the different types of beings, the manual on them. That some of the backstories is that they were at war with each other. So we got to take all those things into context. But I think that the level playing ground is that at least the private industry might be able to be talked to and brought out into the light so that we can start to use the technologies for the betterment of mankind. And maybe we can start having some better and honest conversations with them about what they know as well about these beings. And yeah, it's going to be touch and go if they're talking about, well, yeah, we had some that we killed. Yeah, that's going to be a whole different ballgame. Probably lawyers and stuff are going to have to get involved. But if it's just a retrieval that went well, and there was no violence, and said, they could probably talk about some of that. So that's just my take on it, and I'm just trying to, because we've been kind of painting the kettle black most of this conversation, but I see a little bit of light in a common ground that might be in our future, but the legacy folks have to really buy into that. And that's going to take a lot of their leadership changing their mind.
Only wait until the end for this question, but how would you preserve the human race?
What I would say is what really the Bible has said, because that's the NHI to me, as well as some of the other NHI that, other people, that don't want to believe in God and all that they all seem to be saying the same thing. You guys need to learn to love each other properly. You guys need to learn how to control your thoughts, how to control your lives, and stop giving in to your carnalities, because that's where things fall apart. And I think ultimately, if we can do that, and it's got to be on an individual basis. I mean, I can talk and preach as much as you like on that topic and try to motivate everybody in the audience today, but it's really up to each individual as to whether or not they're really going to commit to changing the way they are. I mean, I don't know how many times I've had to battle different things in my life because of my own carnalities. Yes, I've had a problem with a multitude of things, just like any other man on the face of this earth. I've had my lusts for things, my me time, all that kind of stuff, and chasing after girls and all this other stuff. It's at a certain point, we need to come to a realization that it's our own battle, and I can't change your mind, but you can. You're responsible for your own thoughts and your own processes. But I can tell you and encourage you and say that you can control your mind. I've done it myself. I just didn't think about it. I just thought I was playing along as a regular man would. I was a young man of 20 some odd years old, and I was really buff and very muscular. I could have whatever I wanted at any time. So that stuff left me, though, when I got married, and I changed at that point. And then I had my experience on the Nellis test range that changed me even further. And gradually I learned how to control all that stuff. You don't have to give into that stuff. And I think that's something that the NHI are looking for, is that change of mind, and or at least enough of us to change our mind. And I think that's what a lot of people in some of these spaces talk about, is, are we moving into a higher level of ourselves, or are we digressing to a lower level? That seems to be the battle. And that's also in the Bible, that fight there is between these two opposing parts of us. And that's where the battleground is. And I'll do Doom a good favor here. There's a war on for this world. There's a war on for you and every one of us. And that's a fact. I can tell you that. So it's time to either realize that that's the reality, or just brush it off like it's another day and just go on and continue doing what you're doing. It's totally up to you.
They want our cosmic narrative to align with theirs.
Right. And we
Perhaps
have
we
to
could
be
assert our
acceptable.
own.
Think about it. If they have already set up all these many centuries of governance, and then they get a barbaric race in like us that have no clue what to do with that, yeah, we would be a liability to them.
What if they're all cosmic monarchies and this is the first place where a republic of the people actually exists?
Yeah, and that's the other thing, is that, yeah, it seems to be like even the Bible kind of alludes to the fact that this is like a testing ground, or like a prison world, where we're not
Prison
allowed to
planet.
go too far. We're not allowed to
Yeah.
stray too far.
Yo, I just want to welcome one of my good friends to the stage, Chupacabra. Welcome. You got your hand raised.
What's up, man? How
Hey,
you guys
Tupac.
doing? How you doing, Jason? Good to hear
Yep.
from you, man. I have a quick question for you. I don't know if you saw this, but Stephen Greenstreet released an interview with, I think it was Tim. I already know Tim Phillips, and they were talking about some of the stuff that the Wall Street Journal had uncovered about the hazing stuff that's going on and people being shown bogus photos. But something interesting that Tim said, he said that when he looked into some of these cases, there were indeed witnesses to exotic craft that the U.S. had been working on. And one of them, he said, looked a lot like a Klingon warship. And that reminded me of the shape of the craft that you said you saw on the base.
It's not as big.
The kind of like, not as big, but I mean, I don't know. Just the idea that, you know, the overall shape and design of the so-called Klingon ship, of having these two kind of horn objects that come around the side, and the way he used that term. Obviously, I don't, you know, some of the stuff they're covering up. I'm not saying like, do you think it was ours? But what I'm saying is that's an interesting connection. I just want to know if you had heard how he described something that he confirmed.
Yeah, existed. I would say that there's probably some truth to that. And yeah, what I saw was definitely not like a big Klingon ship. It was more the size of a small helicopter. Yeah, the horns were kind of, they went from the top to the bottom of the craft and rested on the horns when it was on the desert floor on those horns. And yeah, it did have some similarity, because I know that the Klingon ships have those like bird of prey kind of wings on the side. The horns weren't quite as wide as that. They more or less stayed pretty much static, but in flight they would, you know, I don't know how to put it, you know, if you'd imagine your hands being parallel to each other, and then in flight your hands going out like slightly opening up like to the left and the right with your fingertips. The horns did that. And then this white mist would appear inside of the semicircle between the craft and the horns. It was like there was some kind of energy that caused the air or something to look like a mist on either side.
To condense. That reminds me of like the kind of interference or the kind of condensation you see when a jet goes Mach 1 or whatever,
exactly,
over, like the ocean over water.
Yes. Yeah, that's kind of what it looked like. It was like something and it would pop out like a heartbeat. It would be like, if you'd imagine while it was flying, that mist would go whoof, whoof, and then disappear, and then whoof, and then it would do it again. And it was very rhythmic as it was flying. And you can actually see part of that in the video. If you look closely at that one that I mentioned to everybody, that video shows it in flight. And that's why it looks like it's changing shape, is that mist is very opaque. And I think that the picture quality just made it look like it was changing shape, but it's actually a mist that's going in between the horns.
Well, that's amazing. Yeah, thank you. There's a lot of questions now of like how this thing could move and why it would produce that like condensation or that mist in there. Identical to when one of our jets goes Mach 1.
I'll reveal one other aspect that I've never talked about before. It also, the skin changed color. It would go from a pastel looking red to green, then blue, and then back to white as it was resting on the desert floor. It didn't change color while it was in flight. It was only while it was resting and was actively powered up on the floor of the desert. But it changed color.
How would you describe the transition between colors?
You ever seen one of those Hot Wheel cars that you can put under cold and hot water? And it changes. It was exactly like that. And it would just permeate the whole surface, and then it would change to the next one and permeate the whole surface, change to the next one.
Sort of organically.
Was it a consistent?
Sorry, sort of organically, like the orbs change color.
Yes.
And was the colors the same order?
It was always the same order. It would go, I think it was from the red to the green to the blue to the white, the red, the green, the blue, then the white. That's the way it went.
Reminds me of like a cuttlefish. You know what I mean? The skin of like a squid.
Yeah, well, I think spectrum-wise, Bob, is he still here? Or Moneypenny, one of you guys? Isn't that in line with the way the spectrum is lined up?
Yeah, but I'm actually thinking about the orbs, because this sounds very much like a plasma-based craft. We looked just last week at the fact that most of these, what we call entities, are described as being part of the neural network of the craft by technically connecting their own veins, their own neural network into the craft. So there's a little pad that some people have reported on the back of the hands or the limbs of the alien, which effectively pulls back the skin almost in an automatic move. So the skin pulls back, revealing sort of nerve endings that intrinsically link into the craft itself. And obviously with plasma, the being can produce the plasma, which then forms the orb or the craft. I mean, it normally would form the orb, which would then metamorphosize into anything it wants. There are many that look literally like a 777 or a Cessna. Cessnas apparently are really popular. There's a lot of orb-based Cessnas that are now flying around in the States.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, and it's quite possible. I'm still trying to figure out a lot of what I've experienced myself, but as you know, that we've had some really good conversations, and every time we have discussions like we're having now, we tend to discover even new areas to study. So I'm glad we're doing that.
But when they're flying, the color change is normally down to thermals, temperature changes, but also the density of different gases. So you have argon, you've got hydrogen, you've got oxygen, nitrogen, whatever. All these different gases are different levels of density and react and give off a different frequency. So our eyes pick up frequencies, and some of the frequencies we don't see at all. So we are effectively having an optical illusion when we see these things in the skies quite often. We aren't seeing the whole picture. But what we do see is when the different gases are different levels of density and ionization specifically. So they look different colors as they change on that.
Well, here's a good test then you could probably do in a lab. This is something that just occurred to me, is perhaps it looked white while it was in flight, but what if it was changing colors so rapidly? When you do that through the spectrum of the red, the green, the blue, and the white, when it's done in rapid succession, if you did that in a lab, would it look white overall to the observer?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
You see, and that's something that you could test, because that would be very telling that, while it was resting, it wasn't oscillating as quickly, so I could actually detect the different shades. But then as it powered up for flight, it kind of seemed like it was all white, but maybe it was still oscillating, but just at a much higher frequency. So that was just my thought. But anyways, that's something we could actually figure out pretty quickly, I think.
Well, there's a group called REFCON that actually study plasmas and do exactly that. But then NASA's 48-page document goes into it, the one that was released following the FOIA in January.
Yeah, and then the other aspect is that why in flight did that mist appear between the horns and the fuselage, and just kind of rhythmically, appear and then disappear, appear, disappear. That's the other aspect that'd be interesting to kind of research. It. Why would that happen?
Is it not chaff? It's surely probably chaff, like they use with UAVs to deliberately change. It's like glitter stuff that will deliberately do that, normally as a sort of optical disguise again, but sometimes it would be to do with the actual opticals, because they're using lasers and refractions and lights and things on the human-made ones.
Ooh.
And it emulates the UAVs. The orbs are so clever; they are emulating the fake versions of them.
Yeah, well, I just thought of it too. Then maybe at higher frequencies, the mist, on top of the skin changing the color, but the mist, if it was going at a higher frequency, would it eventually turn into a plasma and look like an orb of light?
Yeah, it'll be a plasma all the way through, just different evolutions of plasma, because the plasma is at different states, the speed of the molecular bottom bit. God, I hope Science Bob is not in here, because he'll be laughing his tots off at me.
All right. Anyway, that's good. Some good discussions. Some areas to crack on that. I'd be interested to see what you might think about that. All right. Who else we got questions from?
We got Red Panda, Doomer, Sean. Let's go in that order.
Cool. I'll try and be quick. Maybe a little bit of sideball. Feel free to go as in depth as you want. But that Matthew Brown post recently. Curious if you had any thoughts on it, if you saw it, and I don't know. I'll put it up in the nest for sure. Maybe we should read it for the room. But do you have any thoughts on that? Do you know what I'm talking about? The one that you sent to Elon. I'll just read it for the room. It's a little long, but This is Matthew Brown again. This is the Immaculate Constellation whistleblower who Michael Schellenberger kind of testified on behalf of at the last congressional hearing. And then Jeremy and George actually yesterday on Weaponized kind of talked about this tweet too and elaborated on it. So it's like pretty much confirmed this is actually him. Context, this is in the middle of the Elon Musk-Trump kind of feud last week where Elon said that Trump's in the Epstein files. Matthew says, hey Elon Musk, interested in a real asymmetric advantage to wield in this political adventure you have started? As you now know, the White House has long possessed a unique AI capable of accurately predicting a range of future events. Talk about some stiff competition or opposition. That must have been a bitter drought indeed. Though probably nowhere near as bad as learning that Sam Altman, had betrayed you. Mind you, he tagged Sam Altman. Don't worry, we have not forgotten who is responsible for murdering, in italics, the first sentient artificial, quote, intelligence created in the public realm, all capital. And then he at Schellenberger. Justice is coming, thanks to the at FBI and at US Navy. Still, you have played a marvelous catch-up game in this area despite being caught unaware, HT. So how about something else? Maybe at Energy, the Department of Energy, and Propulsion, question mark. Getting to Mars will require serious, spelled SIRIUS, amounts of both. And rockets feel so 1947 to me. Don't they to you? Remember when you were briefed by the special executive staff of at real Donald Trump on all caps marsupial, question mark? Pretty nifty how at NGA, and the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, is able to keep track of all those non-structured light energy craft flying around the world. Go at Cardinals. But hey, they were lying to you when they said we don't know how they work. Anyways, next time you're visiting at Washington, D.C., young Republicans, ask for a tour of at Naspax River, PAO, Patuxent River, which is a Navy site. Since you have all the clearances, it shouldn't be an issue for you to get a tour of the special projects hangar owned by Amentum Corp. and other fun spaces. Make sure to look up. So about now you are realizing how terribly, italicized, deceived, and manipulated you have been, and by people who claim to love at Jesus above all else. If you are serious about saving humanity, all caps, kind of great for the title room. If you're serious about saving humanity from itself, parentheses, and the others, at Jeremy Corbell and at George Knapp can help you get up to speed. They are true warriors for the capital G good. And then he does MMTU and ABORYMON, a Borimon. Then he has an excerpt, I think, from the Schellenberger document, a picture of Trump that says promises made, promises kept. This was the curious thing. He has this kind of, I think people were saying it was an Enochian, like, cipher wheel with, like, Enochian letters, and that's referencing like John Dee and these apparent angels that he was in contact with, and then an upside-down American flag. So, yeah, that was kind of a lot to even just read. But, yeah, did you have any thoughts when you saw that or anything about that kind of stand out to you?
Yeah, parts of it do. I would also say that, yeah, I know Matt myself personally.
How did you guys get connected?
He came to me after I testified, and we got to know each other over dinner with several others, and we just became friends. And then eventually he opened up. I gave him the opportunity to anonymously go forward. He did. He took that, and then, I never pressured him at all to come forward publicly, but that's been his thing. So he's been very brave. He's touched on some of the. So anyway,
Good on you too, by the way, Jason. I saw you do that with that other girl too. I see you really trying to be like a positive network for some of these people. So kudos to that.
Yeah, and I'm willing to do that with anybody else that wants to come forward. I know how to do it discreetly. I know how to do it quietly. Or if you want to go public, I've definitely went full Monty on that too. But getting back to Matt Brown and what he was saying there about Elon, is that yes, they do have a method to detect these craft coming in. I think I've heard before that it's in a certain gigahertz range, and it's usually because if they are coming in from space and into the atmosphere, that their propulsion has to switch from one mode of operation to another, and that's detectable. The other thing is that neutrinos are also another possible way to be tracking these, because if there's a neutrino trail that's very straight and very long, that's quite unusual, and things like this. So they have a lot of different things where they can track this stuff. And then you've got folks that come forward about Antarctica and the air ray that's there, and how that can be used to cause earthquakes. And oh, by the way, yes, it does detect neutrinos passively. And, that might be another array that's being used, and apparently, according to what's his name,
Eric Hecker.
yeah, Hecker. I met with him in a space once, and yeah, he seems to have put together quite a bit of information about that. So yeah, those are all possibilities, but I do know that they do track them, and they use, in some cases, legacy satellite equipment and sensors. So that's something that you can get off the shelf, or that's already in our inventory. There's ways to do it, and I think a lot of times what happens is in the intel community, a lot of it goes unreported. Well, the right people in the legacy program are looking at the data, but they have categorized some of this anomalous stuff as being junk data, and people and intel analysts are trying to ignore it, unless you read into the program and that's what you're looking for. So there's a small cadre of people that understand what to look for, and apparently that data has been available for quite a long time, all the way back to when I was in the program in the 1990s and probably earlier. So there's those things to look into as well. So yes, I agree with Matt, and he does have. He is a very intelligent person, and has an intelligence background. He puts things together quite well. He is not crazy. Let me put it that way. I think people have been accusing him of that. But yeah, he put together the things that he was exposed to, and when he first told me about all of this, because I heard about Immaculate Constellation much earlier than Congress did, but I knew what he was talking about. I didn't tell him what I knew about it because I wanted to protect him, and that was kind of how it rolled out. So he actually had a lot more information that he said he didn't want to discuss with me, and that apparently is part of what he said to Elon in that message. And there's a lot of hidden meanings in there, and I don't know exactly what he's pointing to. So I'm kind of going through that myself. Let me put it that way. There's parts of it that sound like I think I know what he's talking about, but I'm not quite ready to make that judgment call yet. But when I am, maybe I can discuss it in more depth. But right now, I'm not quite sure. And
Cool.
maybe I'll talk to Matt myself and ask him straight up. I don't know.
Yeah, that'd be helpful. Maybe get him in a space to break that down. That would be amazing. Another preservation of the human
Yeah,
race with
if he's
Matt
going
Morale.
public, on X, then yeah, I'll talk to him. And,
Everyone's wondering what he meant, I mean, but yeah, cool. All right, Doomer. We'll go to Doomer Daddy.
Hey, thanks for bringing me up, you guys. Is the audio okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
You know how it is on this platform. Augustus Mays, Red Panda, thanks so much for holding the space. It's been a while since we heard from Sands. Jason, thanks for offering yourself up for advanced interrogation to the unwashed masses once again. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of yours, and you and I agree and disagree on a lot. I'm not here to get into a bitch fight or
oh,
or,
come
or
on, man.
disagree. I miss you, man.
Yeah, I miss you too. I felt like for this past month and a half, I think it is actually, I needed that break, but it was mainly just to get myself situated here in my new apartment.
Oh, we all do. You have to
We do.
take breaks from X, so you can stand more Mercury.
Yeah.
So one of what I personally really want to know from you is, you know, you've always been very honest, very vulnerable publicly, and there's nothing. I don't disagree with you at all on the necessity and the need to become a virtuous and a good person, right? Like fix yourself.
Right.
But you do have a different profile. There's some what I would consider healthy, sexy, dark anger
Yeah, there
in your
is.
face. I welcome that. And my question to you is about politically, when it comes to, the space is called preservation of the human race, and there's a war. And so I'm not criticizing, your advocacy for virtue. I find that uncontroversial. My question is politically, meaning power. Where do you stand now in terms of what humanity needs to do to win this war? Because wars require virtue, but it's not enough. War is about power. When it comes to disclosure, you yourself have experienced being a firsthand witness, being DOPSR approved, being arrow approved, submitting stuff to the ICIG, and explicitly not being selected for the second disclosure hearing with more watered down testimonies. I would argue you've experienced censorship even from the disclosure circle. Where do you stand now in the war for disclosure, if you agree with that term? And in terms of power, other than rainbows, unicorns, virtue, love and light, and flowers, where do you see and how do you see this fight needs to be fought, especially when it comes to what I think is an impotent method at this point, legislative approaches?
You've kind of touched on it when you.
And I'm sorry for coming across as aggressive. I'm just being honest, like, you know where I stand.
Yes, I know. And we've had very deep discussions about that. And you know that I do have a portion of me that is what I would call the righteous anger part of me. I'm not one of those guys that cowers in the trenches. If somebody's life is in danger, I jump up and I take action. I don't freeze up like some people do. And quite frankly, when I do that, I'm kind of pissed off. And I do that only in cases where I have to. How that applies to the politics of today and disclosure, I would say that planned disclosure cannot be adversarial, but it is quite biased in some ways because you're talking about political figureheads that are either Democrat, Republican, liberal, or conservative, and you've seen kind of it sway from one extreme to another from time to time when it comes to disclosure. So I don't really like politics, so I'm kind of happy I don't have.
Well, I don't like war either, right? Like,
Yeah,
we're
and
in
I
a
don't either.
situation that nobody likes.
Right, but I do feel, to answer your question very squarely in the face, is there is going to be a war. That is inevitable. I think that every time that there is a new um, push towards um, transparency, towards truth, there's always a deep resistance on the other side that has to be literally punched in the mouth or killed. And I see that happening at some point. I think that there's going to be an intervention. Let me put it that way. That's the war I see. That's the war that the Bible describes. That's the war that I feel that is coming and impending in my heart and soul every day of my life. I know that I'm here to be the best person I can be. But if that war takes place in my lifetime, I will not let my children die. I will go fight first.
And when it comes to disclosure, I mean,
Same thing there. They
do you
know who I
see
am. They know
you're the
who I
most
am.
active person? I mean, you have all of my credit. Like, Jake Barber's not in this room, Grush is not in this room. You're here, so I'm not here to
Well,
discredit
here's
you.
what I would say to them. You know who I am. You know that I don't flirt around with things. If you want me to speak, I can speak like I am now and just do it nice and politely. However, if you need to get behind closed doors and get down and dirty, I can do that too. And get to the point where we can actually come up with like a war plan if that's what you want and try to come up with the right decision making process with that. That's what I was paid for to do. I was a strategic planner. Um, and that is who I am.
Do you see disclosure still being effectively spearheaded, usefully spearheaded from
Yes.
any? You
Yeah.
do?
Because, and here's the reason why is that I know that a lot of the disclosure and transparency is going to have to do with what Luna is trying to do and tackle this declassification issue because you can't even get to the files until you talk to the person that owns the files and convince them that this is a good idea. Then you got to go into the files, and each one of them on a case by case basis are probably going to be hummed and hawed and thought over until the horse is dead multiple times through discussion after discussion. And years from now, when Luna has probably got better things to do with her life, it's still going to be rolling through that, and that's the part that is very hard to take in a bitter pill because that's how tough it is. And then you've got all the people in the legacy program pushing against it and trying to pull the rug out from underneath you politically or making phone calls behind your back and things like this up to Capitol Hill and shutting it all down as we've seen time after time. and that's not going to go away either. So there's a part of this that I find absolutely nerve-wracking for me, that if I was part of the plan disclosure all the time, yeah. But if they want a person that just can come in and be a consultant and just give them the straight and skinny when they come up to a decision point, I'm all in. I don't want to be there day to day though, because I think I would find that a drudgery.
And last question, and thank you to the hosts for letting me have this back and forth. Currently I respectfully disagree with you. I think we're being walked off the plank, even by the current administration. I'm a crypto bro, so I'm happy that Trump won, but
Rogers.
but I think I think in terms of actual disclosure, I think the fact that you're here in the space and not in the first or the second, open courtroom hearings that we already had is
Yeah.
already enough proof that we're just being jerked around. My question to you is, at what point have you set for yourself a condition where you say, oh, this is just Operation Blue Book 20.0? At what point do you say, no, we're just getting disclosure edging, we're just getting disclosure foreplay? The plan, when Lou Elizondo says go get a hobby, is actually for us to shut up and die quietly. At what point do you draw that line?
Well, I like Lou. He's been, my
I
hero.
don't mean Lou specifically, but
Well, I
it
know,
doesn't
but
seem like we're really getting anything other than foreplay.
well, it exemplifies some of the other leadership that's involved also, because you get the same feeling there.
Correct.
Honestly, I've already gotten to that point where I'm just like, I was really hopeful when Lou came up and testified and did that testimony thing, but then after the whole thing was over and done, I was like, this was not what I was expecting.
Correct. Yeah.
But at the same time, I knew there was a skiff discussion where they talked more in depth, and the people that had clearances were allowed to hear other parts of that.
And Jason, not to cut you off, but we're still at the point where Burchett has not made it into a simple fucking room with Grush. So like the skiff seems more like a bug, not a feature, right? You get
As
what
far
I'm
as we
asking. At what
know,
point do we say the government doesn't give a fuck? We're the problem and not the solution in their eyes.
I would say that that's been my feel from the very start. That's why I chose to speak to the public and you guys,
Yeah.
because I felt like that was the only place where we were going to get any honest brokers involved. Because um, my life long, every time the government gets involved, whether it's from welfare or UAPs and everything in between, they invariably screw it up.
Yeah, and it's not a disclosure effort, right?
Exactly. And it always gets derailed or slowballed to the point where the people that actually did have skin in the game, they end up leaving, and now the whole effort gets squashed or forgotten about. So to me, the real disclosure has yet to happen. Now, you can take it or leave it. This is my opinion about why I want to go public. As you know, you got Moneypenny, you got Science Bob here. We've got our own people with doctorates. We've got our own people with field testing capabilities. We've got people that are engineers, scientists, you name it, biologists of our own. We have people that, like in Las Vegas, where one of these things crashes into one of these UAP crashes into somebody's backyard. But if we're not organized enough to have a group of people show up there so that when the police show up, they have some protection locally from all these jerk offs that might have come along. And all it takes is us to win once, and we got it. We're the ones that are all over the globe. We're the ones that are interested in getting to understand these people that are visiting our planet. So why don't we take the responsibility and create our own
So at
third
the
party?
risk of putting words in your mouth, you loosely agree with me that Grush may have been necessary and to get us to this point, but
Yeah.
we're no longer at a point where the congressional mechanism is logically sufficient. If we don't crowdsource disclosure extra governmentally, you
Well,
don't see it happening.
let me qualify that statement a little bit. Apparently, it is perfectly okay with Congress to be where they're at. It is not okay for the public to still be in the dark about it. That is the part that sucks for us. And that is why I'm saying if we don't want it to suck for us anymore, we're going to have to take responsibility, because apparently Congress and government have already decided that this is either too large for them to tackle, and or they're getting nowhere, or they don't want to get anywhere.
Thank you, Jason. And thanks, guys, for letting me ask my questions. Oh, well, the last thing, do you think we're in the end times right now?
Yeah, I definitely feel that.
As in biblical
Oof.
revelations end times?
As
Like,
in Armageddon stuff, yeah. I think
yeah.
that coming to a head, like I said, I feel like the only way to get through the stagnation and the stalemating that is going on right now is just like the Bible has said for many millennia, that there's going to be an intervention from on high. And that's the only thing that's going to, and they're going to take the those of us who are ready, and the other ones are going to have to fight for survival on this planet.
Is this 2027? Is this tying into that, do you think? Or what role does the 2027 time frame play
That
into the
I don't know who's tied into just the 2027. I think that's to me, it's always been a window of time, and I'll tell you why. If you hadn't heard it from me before, I've said it in other spaces. The reason why is while I was on mission, there was actually information and intel we captured that stated that these beings would be coming back for their stuff 50 to 70 years from when I was there in the 1990s. So we're entering that window of time. So 50 to 70 years, you're talking 10 to 20 years between 2025 to 2035 or 45. So to me, it's always been a window of time, but the clock has already started ticking. If that makes
Thanks
sense.
so much, you guys. If it's cool, I'll just hang out here. But I got all my questions in. And thank you, Jason. You know I love you, man.
Yep, love you too there. Good to hear and see you.
Yeah, for sure. You can hang out on stage, Doomer. It's always a pleasure, bro.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, man. Next time you bring the drill, though, you know, make sure you bring an extra battery because I'm feeling drained.
Yeah, I was going to say it's at the top of the hour. We can take a couple more if you want, but I'm going to get pretty hungry here in a minute.
Yeah, I'm getting hungry too, bro. All right, let's hear from Rich, who we haven't heard from yet, and then we'll go to Money Penny for the last one.
All right.
Hey, I appreciate what you guys are doing, and I'm really sorry I joined late. What a great conversation right now, Jason. It's a direct question to what you just brought up about allowing access to files within individuals. Could you elaborate a little bit more on your assertion that the military possesses pre-stored files within consciousness within us that remain inaccessible until unlocked by allowing these individuals in the government within our own encrypted mind? Are you referring to a I can't even say the word, compartmentalized memory suppression, neural implants, or a form of classified cognitive conditioning that allows access only when granted by those certain individuals that hold those encrypted files within their memory?
Um, so, yeah, I spoke of the telepathy and the connectedness. The other thing I spoke of when you're saying files, yes, there's actual files in the military. The Department of Defense has them tucked away. And those are needing to be looked at least and see if they can be declassified. When it comes to getting connected, I don't feel like I was connected up until that point. However, I can point to certain things before I actually had the telepathic interface with the guy at the Nellis test range that I can point back to in my, earlier years where I was being, contacted or communicated with. And sometimes there'd be physical changes to my world and situations that I can't explain. And other times, it was just a knowing or wisdom would come. Now, after I had that telepathic experience with that individual in the Nevada desert, um, something definitely changed. It's like I've remained plugged in ever since. I've heard people talk to me about it, and they say that uh, that your brain is more like an antenna, and when it's tuned to a certain frequency, you can start to receive the messages in that particular bandwidth or wavelength. And I think that's what happened in that case, is that portion of my brain that he was communicating with tuned me in, and I've remained that way. My brain, the antenna in my brain, has constantly been there ever since. And I think that's
Jason,
something that happens. And I think some people are born with this connection, or that their antenna in their brain, whatever that means, is already tuned. And then there's other people that have to really focus to get it to work. And I think that's the missing magic that we've lost when it comes to telepathy, is that tuning in part is, you know, um, it's not part of our culture anymore. And I think that's something that everybody can strive to become. And then once you're part of it, yes, you do get real, no kidding, downloads. And sometimes now, getting back to what Moneypenny was asking me, is that, you know, she asked if that communication in the desert left me with a headache or dizziness. No, in that encounter, it did not. However, after that, when I've received certain downloads, yes, it did get, I did get dizzy, a little bit of a dizziness, like you stand up too quickly or something, but I was already
can I
standing
say
up.
something? Can I
Yeah,
interject just really, really quick? Because you have gotten to know me a little bit. You've spoken personally.
yes,
As you know, and the group knows, a lot of my friends in here know, my uncle has 50 years and carries three doctrines in biblical philosophy, so theology. And we've taken his work of 50 years of the book of Revelation, who he uses Jack Sarfati's work within it. So what we're doing right now is taking his work and reapplying it to a holographic conscious, multi-dimensional universe
yeah,
with the proper Temple Mount over the city of David, and then reapplying it with what's going on in the world today. And I mean, it's already written. So what you are saying is we're at the ends of time. This is biblical. I believe that wholeheartedly. And I'm just going to throw it out there. If my friends want me to bring my uncle back to talk about it,
yeah,
I'm more than happy to do it within the framework, so we can have a panel group of discussions, because he's connected with Rice University and
hmm,
all those other big universities that are studying the topic. But he's just, and nobody wants to remain that way. He's lived the teachings of Jesus and he's walked that way. He's never done a drug. He's never had a sip of alcohol.
hmm,
So I'm just putting it out there. If you guys would like me to do that again, happy to do it, because
yeah. And
it's
it's
such
something that
good.
you have to experience. So yeah, I would encourage you, if you are interested in that aspect, and you can do that. Um, and then on top of that, I would also say that each of us is capable of this. I'm no different. There's going to be some of you that might be able to do this more quickly than others, and more, get a lot better. And by the way, once information is in the ether, so to speak, or whatever, it never dies. Okay, and that's why you can get out there, and there's people that say they talk to the dead. It's not because they're dead; they are still alive. It's just that the shell of what was containing their essence is gone, but they never died. And that's because they were a conscious being. And that consciousness can be extended even into trees, plants, anything living, anything created can never die. There is a eternal part of all of us that goes and lives on. And that is always accessible. I think that's what ultimately I felt when I had that telepathic interface with this guy, is that it's all connected on that level. And I can't explain how that feeling is, other than it's peaceful, it's calm, and it's like a family connecting. You're finally connecting with the family out there. That's really all it felt like to me. So that's the way I would describe it, and that's why I would say, yeah, what you're experiencing, when you're talking to like your dad or whatever, or talking, and other people doing the same thing. That may be part of it, is that they're able to tune into it. So that's just me, though. I'm being stupid. So I don't really know how it works, but I can make suppositions based on what I've experienced.
That's just the money penny, and money penny. Thank you for allowing me to.
I can't hear you.
Can I get the money penny?
Oh, okay.
Final question, Jason. Thank you for doing this. I know you are brilliant, and sometimes you can talk for hours and hours and hours, and I've fallen asleep and woken up. I've still had you talking, and that's not a dream. It's happened.
Yeah.
So
Well,
two quick
thank you.
questions. First one
I
is,
think
see
so.
me
I'm
as a
not
British
boring, Lori.
woman, a British person who can be ignorant on certain parts of how different parts of the US military and things join together. How does NASA join up with the UFO related parts of the RAF and other US military? The reason I'm asking that, and the point I'm getting at here, is we now know since 1991, because of a FOIA request that we got, where we got all the videos and all these, fascinatingly in-depth analytical studies of space plasma orbs going on the space shuttle missions since 1991, and that they knew all about, the sentience, the intelligence, whatever, for, what is 30 odd years. How do they communicate that, or do they not communicate it with other branches of the military that are looking at UAPs and things?
Nope, it is all going on behind the scenes, again, in a red and black program where the original photos, that's where we got the archive from the FOIA request. There's tons more stuff that they have. But again, it is, a byproduct of our interagency and Department of Defense in league with our government hiding all of this. So if you think about it, NASA and most of its money was generated from a desire for overcoming the Russians. So very militaristic. Okay, it has been from the start, and it has been all the way up until now. It's all been about getting our satellites up there before our enemies do, and the same thing about the moon. And I think it's very telling that we're not as concerned about the moon as we are as China is right now, and there's reason for that. But I believe we were told to get off the moon, to stay put, and I think that we're pretty much being told do not explore beyond a certain.
You're implying China has a consensual relationship with a negative NHI, if I'm not putting
Right.
words in your
That's
mouth.
my fear. Honestly, you're right. You're right. I agree with that. If there's a group or a country, and
Not negative.
there's a nation on this earth that's willing to go and wallow in the mud with those types, it would be China. They seem to have zero regard for people, crimes against humanity. Even they just seem to. They have no depth to their debauchery sometimes.
Okay, so that is helpful because obviously when we think of November, when we had, skies all over New Jersey and all over our military bases, our US military bases here in the UK that were full of orbs, it would have been pretty obvious at the time for NASA to have told the White House and Congress and everybody else that they'd been studying these orbs for 35 years and they knew exactly what they were.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, that's the way I feel too. It's just that, yes, I've recently come forward, but I've known for decades as well. And it's piss poor that, we're finally getting to a point where you're starting to hear from the whistleblowers and people that were on the inside.
It's disclosure. It is a life form that can organize, replicate, it can calculate, it can eat up energy, produce energy. And yet it's secret for 35 years until somebody in the Institute of Physics manages to get a FOIA through NASA. It just seems ridiculous to me.
So I would say you're going to find a friend in your whistleblowers more than you will anyone else right now, because the disclosure folks are fighting a battle of paperwork and convincing that's going to last years. And if you want to talk about stuff more readily, the whistleblowers are going to be there for you. I think more readily.
The trouble is, I've got too many of them, and they talk too much.
Well,
you're lovely.
True. Yeah, not everybody's got the gift of being able to speak well, and I hate to say that, but
Thank you. You're obviously my favorite, Jason. You're definitely my favorite.
Well, thank you. I've been practicing a lot.
Oh, you're lovely. Thank you. I'll say good night. And thank you, Augustus, for the room. Thank you for letting me speak.
No, thank Jason. Jason, thank you so much for your time today. Everybody was really looking forward to it. You showed up, showed out, and it was showtime, and we had a great time.
Yeah, it was good.
I thank you so much, and we got a lot of new information too. So that's always, something for people to clip up later. I know Red Panda Koala might want to make some videos, and other enthusiasts
Yeah,
like.
learning about the Matt Brown connection was pretty interesting and cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool. By the way, I am going out to MUFON down in was it Arizona in
Oh,
August,
nice.
mid-August. So if you guys want to go meet me in person, that's where I'll be in August. They're flying me out there to speak, and
Is it like a conference or like one of their weekly meetings kind of a guest speaker?
it sounded like it was a conference. It was like I'm one of the speakers, is what they said.
Cool.
So
I'll be there.
Augustus and Red Panda, I know you guys need to end the space. I'm kind of dying to hear what Orr has to say. Do we have room for one last question, or do you guys need to cut it?
no, I can do one more. Yeah.
Do the last one, or you got it, bro. Hell yeah.
Hey, hi, Jason.
Hey.
I was curious if you have any personal spiritual practices, high magical practices, or energetic practices of any sort for your energy cultivation.
Yes, I do. I get up every morning and I do my devotion, which involves reading from the Bible. I do that every day. I'm currently on a devotional that's already structured for me, whereas before it was my own freeform study, followed by prayer. And I really try to take to heart at least one or two, if not more, parts of the scripture and really try to live it and make it like my focus for the day. And it goes pretty well, but you have got to practice this just like you would training your body. You can train your mind the same way. You just have to get disciplined with it. And that's what I do. And the rest is all just how you respond all throughout the day. You have two paths to go. Every time you run into an a-hole on the street, you can either participate or you can ignore, and it's totally up to you. And when I mean ignore, I mean forgive the guy for being an a-hole and just say, yep, not for me today. I'm not going to participate in anger and all that kind of good stuff. But everybody has to make those decisions. Love is a choice. Anger likewise is a choice. So guard your emotions is what I would say. Yeah. And just like Lou has said, read your Bible. There's a war on for this world.
Thank you.
Doom would love that one. Doom loves that one. There's a war. But
All right. Well, that was awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Thanks for letting me have you got my first space after my long hiatus from or hiatus. I don't want to sound like I'm hating on anybody, but yeah, it was a really good space.
Good to have you back, bro. We miss you, but it's always good to take breaks too. Everyone listening, if it ever feels overwhelming, please take a break, go outside, hang out with your family and friends.
Yeah, and when you walk around outside, go barefoot sometimes and just ground yourself. There is an energy to this
All
world.
the time.
There is.
That's right. All right,
Could
guys.
I
Well, this is
interject?
Preservation of the Human Race signing off.